These pandas just flew into Qatar from China. The crew has carefully planned for their journey for months, managing their stress, health, and controlling the temperature. Qatar is home to the largest animal cargo center in the world, and about 500,000 of them travel through here every year, from horses to birds and tiger cubs.
Literally, our VP of the airport, he actually with his team figured out what music is best for the animals to help calm them down.
But Qatar is also one of the hottest places on Earth, averaging 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer. Animals could easily overheat if they sit on a plane for too long. This is especially challenging when the center handles 2.4 million metric tons of freight a year, almost as much as FedEx some years, including luxury cars and fresh food.
It's a massive game of Tetris, and when you play Tetris at this level, you need to always be a little more creative.
So how did this tiny country become the world's cargo hub? And how do crews protect precious cargo in blazing heat? Unloading the freighter is a race against the clock. Crews have to do it in about 45 minutes. It may sound like a lot, but these packs weigh thousands of pounds and take time to move off the plane. Crews have another 650 flights to handle today.
This operation runs like a Swiss watch. Everybody is in a proper place.
Mark Drutch is in charge of the thousands of people who work at the center. Most flights are operated by Qatar Airways, headquartered here in Doha.
Think about the geography. We sit within 8 hours of 2/3 of the world's population.
When Qatar's state-run airline started flying in 1994, it was so small it only served a few destinations, mostly regional ones. But in 1997, a new CEO saw Doha's location, just a few hours from Africa and manufacturing hubs in China and India, as a major asset. He decided to turn it into a cargo hub. To make that happen, the airline started selling cargo space on passenger planes and flying to more places. In 2003, Qatar Airways purchased its first cargo-only plane, and plans to build a modernized airport in Doha began. By the time Hamad International Airport opened in 2014, Qatar Airways' cargo fleet had expanded 8-fold. By 2021, the fleet had more than tripled in size. Cargo accounted for 63% of the company's revenue, and Qatar Airways emerged as one of the world's largest freight carriers, outperformed only by FedEx that year. Now, its network connects 178 destinations on every continent except Antarctica.
The cargo revenue on board is part of making that airplane profitable.
Some airlines have reported cargo accounting for up to 40% of the revenue made off a single flight. Once all those packages make it off the plane, step 2 is to get them inside one of these buildings that make up this massive cargo center, just north of Hamad's passenger terminals. And the crew has to do it fast. The extreme heat could kill some of the cargo.
We carried over 500,000 animals last year.
Crews separate the animals into different rooms. These 2 white tiger cubs get their own. Sounds from other animals could rile them up. They just came off an 8-hour flight from Johannesburg, South Africa.
In advance, before we book any animal, we make sure that our vets are aware that they're coming in. So if there's a vet that happens to be a specialist in tigers or lions or rhinos, whatever, we'll make sure that vet is available.
By law, these cubs need to have enough space to stand up, lie down, and spin around. In 9 hours, they'll board an hour-long flight to Dubai. Transporting animals by plane is considered the most humane way to move them, because it's the fastest. Plane tickets range in price from a couple hundred to thousands of dollars, depending on how much care the animal needs. But Mark says the airline doesn't charge for every animal. This lion, for example, flew for free because it was being rescued from captivity in a zoo.
We have carried tigers, lions, bears, hippos, rhinos from different facilities to bring them back into reserves where they belong.
Another room in the center hosts the birds. There are 300 in here today. They came in on the same flight as the tiger cubs. They're heading to Lebanon. Qatar Airways flies about 6,000 birds every year. But it does limit which animals it will bring on board. Like none for lab testing, and no endangered ones, unless they're being rewilded. About 80% of the animals the airline flies are actually pets. Mostly dogs and cats. Staff have to measure the pets first, to make sure their kennels are the right size. Animals can die from stress if they're kept in cages that are too small. The animal center has 8 vets for every shift.
We make sure the owner knows when the animal's been loaded, when the animal's been unloaded, if they're transiting, how they're doing. We even have pictures that we send them to show them that here's how your animal's doing.
Every year, about 10,000 horses pass through the cargo center. They agitate easily, so the staff have to get creative. Sometimes they play soothing music.
To help calm them down. The stalls for the horses, they're padded, so that the horses, since they're standing so much, it's easier on their feet.
This 150-pound Neapolitan Mastiff flew in from Dublin and is headed to Melbourne. These 2 spaniels came from Sydney on a 15-hour flight. They're about to board their next one, an 8-hour flight to Lisbon. But before they can board, staff need to get them buckled in. That happens here. They put most of the cargo, including animals, onto an aluminum base and fasten it with hooks. A net goes on top to keep the cages extra steady in case of turbulence. Crews need to leave extra space on the pallet so the animals get enough airflow and oxygen. Service dogs are allowed to fly in the cabin. So are falcons. They even get their own passports. Most pets have to fly in cargo. Those tickets usually cost between $200 and $400. The airline also flies fresh food, which accounts for about 20% of its cargo. Like these packs of Norwegian salmon. They can't wait on the tarmac in Qatar's blazing heat either. Drugs would spoil too, so they all need special storage, inside the climate-controlled wing. About 1/3 of the cargo this airline carries requires extra special care. Think things like ammunition, oil and gas equipment, even human remains, and radioactive materials.
That's also part of what we call dangerous goods. You know, dangerous goods, it's scary. We don't want anything to ever go wrong.
But the majority of the cargo the airline flies is actually mail.
A lot of e-commerce we carry nowadays also. It's Amazon, Shein, Temu, everybody.
At each of these cargo gates, all the pallets get sorted, broken down, and separated. Crews call all of these giant packs unit load devices, or ULDs. All the boxes on this one ULD have the same flight, so they take a ride on massive elevators to this waiting room. But if the boxes inside have different connecting flights, like on this ULD, crews unpack and separate them. They break down about 850 of these every day. They randomly select up to 800 of them to send here for an X-ray. That's to make sure the weight on the label matches the cargo's actual weight. The airline says the total weight of the cargo load can't exceed about 230,000 pounds for its planes to take off safely. If the weights match, they sort the package into one of these cages to join other ones with the same connecting flight. When it's time to fly, The packages are built into new ULDs that'll perfectly fit the curved belly of the plane. The loading team uses this elevator platform to get the pallet even with the cargo hold. A rolling track helps it slide right in, while this rubber wheel, called the power drive unit, takes the brunt of the weight so workers don't have to push these heavy pallets. These small hooks lock the pallets in place. Mark says the heaviest ULD needs to go in the middle. It can weigh up to 17 tons, about twice the weight of some cruise ship anchors.
If we're putting a jet engine on the aircraft, because it's so heavy and so dense, you can't put cargo in front of it because the aircraft then would be tilted.
For cargo workers on airlines around the world, weight might be the biggest challenge.
When you're flying, it's not just your bags on the bottom, there's also cargo.
Most air cargo flies under passenger planes. Everything else goes on freighter planes, which don't carry passengers. Lufthansa and Pan Am were some of the first airlines to use them, starting in the 1940s. But the industry didn't really take off until the early 70s, shortly after Boeing introduced its 747, which was the widest aircraft at the time. Its loading deck opens up like this, so huge freight can roll right in. One 747 can weigh about 1 million pounds with cargo. But sending stuff on planes used to be more expensive because freighters were pretty rare. As more airlines added them to their fleets, which also became more fuel efficient, the additional supply started pushing air freight prices down. That's why the teams make sure they maximize the space.
The freight part of the business is much more complex than the passenger side.
One thing that can make it easier on cargo facilities, sticking to just one type of plane.
That makes it easier and more efficient because each aircraft has a unique shape. If you have different shapes, you have to rebuild the pallet.
That's why Qatar Airways wants to eventually fly just 777s. Lifting all this cargo into the air takes 2 of one of the most powerful jet engines ever made. Just one of them costs $24 million. That's part of what makes these carriers so expensive.
These things are not cheap to operate, so an investment in a cargo facility and a cargo fleet is a massive capital investment as well as a very big operating expense investment.
Fuel alone sucks up about $6.9 billion worth in a year, more than 2.5 times what the airline spends on employee pay and benefits.
So we're always looking at ways to reduce our fuel burn and carbon footprint.
Qatar Airways hopes the 50 new Boeing 777-8Fs it ordered will help it reduce freighter emissions by 25%.
We are right now in the plans to build a facility that will more than double the capacity we have here.
Worldwide, planes transport about $6 trillion worth of goods annually. That accounts for about 35% of world trade, even though they move just a tiny chunk of the cargo transported annually. Ships, which can carry much larger loads for cheap, move the bulk of it. But demand for air freight is going up because of e-commerce, which requires fast delivery times, and ships can take weeks to arrive. Right now, there are about 2,200 freighter planes operating worldwide, and reports project that will increase by about 75% by 2041. As for Mark, he hopes to hop on board one day.
I have not flown on a cargo aircraft yet, and I've talked to our chief pilot about it. I've got to find the right opportunity to do that.
But for now, he's just eager to see what they'll be challenged to fly next.
You can come down here and see an incredible car that's being shipped. You can see a new version of an electric Mercedes. You can see an exotic. You can see an antique car. And I got to tell you, that's really cool.